Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're going to be looking at time zones. Now, time zones some people just get, others find face-meltingly difficult. Alright, the way it generally works is England, once again, conquer the world, and set Greenwich Mean Time or England to be 0. So everywhere along here is essentially the 0 line, the prime meridian. Everything east is in front. So for example, when it is 12 PM in England, it is 1 PM in Sweden, Norway, etc. It is +3, 3 PM in these parts of Russia. Now, this is generally based on the rotation of the Earth. The Earth rotates 360 degrees in a day. Therefore, each longitude, each angle of rotation, each 1 degree of rotation, changes the time by approximately 4 minutes. Now, what you're looking at is a map of all the time zones in the world. Not a very detailed one. We'll have a more detailed one underneath. And as you can see, it's a mess. Let me point out a few of its features. You might see that most colours are in identical, or most of them identically green, except for parts of Australia and parts of India. That's because, and a little bit of Pakistan and Burma. Basically, that's because everywhere in the world has 1 hour differences. But for some reason, in Australia, we like being a little different, and we've gone with a half-hour difference with South Australia. And here's even more fun, for some parts of the year, South Australia and Northern Territory don't even have the same time, I don't think. You'll see some countries divide themselves up almost neatly along time zones. So Russia spans several different time zones. In fact, that's a bit of Russia there as well. China decided, actually, no, everyone's going to be doing this at the same time, so 1 time zone there, when really it should be split across 3. We're split across 3, America split themselves across 4, etc. Now, we don't want half a country being in one, half a country being in the other unnecessarily, hence why none of these lines essentially are straight. Even though, based on the position of the sun in the sky, we should be having time zones that are straight lines down. Alright. Other thing to note is in front, behind. Now, what happens when one thing that's 12 hours in front meets the other side of the world that's 12 hours behind? You can't be more than 24 hours in front or behind of another place. So, this is where the international date line comes in. Slightly more complex map of the world. International date line is this jagged line down here. And you'll note that on the bottom of these maps, you may not be able to read it very well, but very simply, one side of the date line, it reads as midnight on Sunday. As soon as you cross the date line, you step over and it becomes first minute of Sunday. So this here is last minute of Sunday, first minute of Sunday. So if you step over the date line, you start repeating the day you just had. All right, let's take a little bit of an example. If we take an example of New Zealand and Samoa, what this is saying is that here, if it is 11:30 PM on a Sunday evening, so 11:30 PM on a Sunday evening, they are just about to hit midnight Sunday. It is 12:30 AM on a Sunday in Samoa. So they are 1 hour apart, separated by that gap. That's a 1 hour gap. And they are 1 hour apart, but they're on essentially different days. I mean, it seems to be the same day there, but it's 23.5 hours difference. Sorry, 23 hours difference. 1 hour later, it gets a little confusing. 1 hour later, New Zealand passes midnight and celebrates half an hour into Monday morning. 1 hour later, Samoa just increases an hour into their Sunday. Not sure of a good way of explaining that, really. But there you go. Enjoy. At some points, they're on the same day, or repeatedly. Others, they change. The date line is one of the most confusing things about this topic, the fact it changes days when we cross the date line. Alright. So, what type of problems do we come across? We come across problems like this. If Singapore is located at north 1 degree, 104 degrees east, and Sydney is located at 34 degrees south, 151 degrees east, what's the time difference between Singapore and Sydney? Now, the time difference in these calculations is not done on this horrible jiggly system. It's done on how it should be, as in purely minutes coming from the number of degrees they are separately. So some basic geography helps. Singapore will be somewhere, oh goodness, around here. Sydney's down there somewhere. We're looking at this gap here. We don't care how far north or south anything is. Sydney's in fact in the same time zone as this chunk of Russia. Western Australia is in the same time zone as all of China. It doesn't actually matter how far north or south you are, the time zones are based vertically. So this is why we only look at eastings and westings when looking at time zones. So, if we imagine this, what this is saying is that if this is our 0, then Singapore is 104 degrees east. Sydney is 151. This gap here is 151 minus 104, which is, what, 49? No, 151 minus 104, 47. So what that's saying is there's 47 degrees difference between them. And we know that for every 1 degree is equal to 4 minutes. So what we do is we take the 47 degrees, multiply it by 4. And what we get is 188 minutes. Now there's 188 minutes between them. All right. Almost always it'll ask for this in hours, and we need to be able to work in hours. So to get minutes to hours, we divide by 60, and that will get us minutes to hours divided by 60, 3.13333. What this is saying is that there's 3 hours and 0.1333 of an hour. Now lots of you will be looking at 180 and thinking, well, that's 3 hours and 8 minutes. Kudos, well played to you guys. The question is, what if you can't see that that is 3 hours and 8 minutes? Well, what you do is you divide by 60. And then you say, great, we have 3 hours, that's locked in, but decimal an hour is weird, because 0.13 of an hour is not 13 minutes. Okay? What we need to do is convert that into minutes, so we multiply it by 60. 0.133333 times 60 is equal to 8. So then, therefore, we have the 3 hours, which came from the initial division, and we had to multiply this back into 60 to get into minutes, which is 8 mins. Alright? I know that's a long-winded process, and if you can see 188 is 3 hours and 8 minutes, brilliant. If not, get in the habit of dividing by 60, then we've got a whole number of hours, and then this decimal part of hours needs to be converted back into minutes. Minutes there. Alright? Now, the question is it ahead or behind? What's the time difference? Well, Singapore, on our map here, wherever we're playing, is further west, so is behind Sydney. So when it's asking here, what is the time difference between Singapore and Sydney, we would say Sydney is 3 hours and 8 minutes ahead of Singapore. Now, yes, I know because of the time zones, that's rounded to 3 hours. But the answer they expect in further is 3 hours and 8 minutes. Alright, another example. In Tokyo, the time is that. Position there, time on Wednesday. In Florence, it is what? Alright, once again, it is helpful just to look at a map, have a map in your book, and figure out whereabout Tokyo and Florence are, so who's in front of who. Alright, let's go up to the map. Well, Tokyo is about there. Florence is about here. We can see that Tokyo will be in front of Florence. Easy enough. So, what we're going to do is look at this and say, well, on the Great Circle, one of them is 140 degrees east. Tokyo is that's our 0, 140 degrees east. And Florence is only 11 east. Therefore, the angle between them will be 129 degrees. Now, 129 degrees is then multiplied by 4 to get the number of minutes. 516 minutes. Alright, then we need to convert that into hours. So divide by 60, and that gets us 8.6 hours. Now note that 8.6 hours doesn't mean 8 hours and 6 minutes. It doesn't mean 8 hours and 60 minutes. That's insane. What it means is that there's 8 hours plus 0.6 hour of minutes. So 8 hours plus 36 minutes. All right. See, much more useful there because you may not be able to pick that 516 minutes is the same as 8 hours and 36 minutes, but if you split it like that, it's good. Alright, so we've been given a time in Florence. It is, a time in Singapore. We're asked to find the time in Tokyo when it is 7 AM on Wednesday in Florence. Alright, if it is 7 AM on Wednesday in Florence, we are going to add time to get to Singapore. So we will add this 8 hours and 36 minutes on. Now you would not believe the number of people who get time calculations wrong. The way I like setting them up is, if we're talking 7 AM here, we have 8 hours and 36 mins to add on. Alright, I would go to the nearest 12. 8 to 12 is 5 hours. So you're going to add on 5 hours here. Here I would take it off. Take off 5 hours. That becomes 3:36. Alright. Then I want to add on another 3 hours. 36 minutes to 12 PM. So I can add 3:36, take off 3:36 here, and that will give me 3:36 PM and 0 there. What this is saying is that when it is 7 AM in Florence, it is 3 hours 36 PM in Tokyo. Same day, we haven't crossed a day because we've gone to midday and then beyond, so we're still in Wednesday and we're going to round to the nearest. 3:36 PM Wednesday rounds to 4 PM Wednesday. C. One more example. Promise I'll be as quick as I can. Alright. Anchorage has latitude of 60 north, latitude, longitude 150 west. Anchorage is there. Helsinki is here. They want to know what is the gap between them in time. Or more specifically, if it is 7 PM in Anchorage, here, what time is it in Helsinki? Alright, now the gap in longitude in latitude rather is interesting. One is 150 degrees west, so the 0 line would be about here. 150 degrees west is that way. This way is 25 degrees east, meaning that the total gap is 175 degrees. 175 degrees is multiplied by 4 to get it into minutes, because each degree is a minute, and we have 175 times 4, 700 minutes. Divided by 60 is 11.66666 hours. If you can't spot that as 11 hours and 40 minutes, that is fine. But you take 0.66666 times it by 60, you'll get 40. So that gives us 11 hours, 40 minutes. Now, the time calculation, it is 7 PM in Anchorage. What time is it in Helsinki? We've got to add on 11 hours, 40. I once again would add 5 to get to midnight. So 12 AM, take 5 here, 6:40. Then I would add 6:40 on to here, 6:40 AM here. And note that because we've gone past midnight, if it is Monday in Anchorage, it is 6:40 AM in Helsinki on Tuesday. All right. That last example is a hard one. You all can have a shot at yourself, but we'll go through it in class. Thank you for surviving nearly 15 minutes. If you run 4 degrees that way, you'll get your time back. Enjoy.